So, for the spoiler free review section, I'm just going to say it's going to be a lot shorter because there's a lot to digest with this film. But I'm going to say that the movie is not great. I watched it 2 times. So, upon the first viewing, the CG, the green screen was quite the eyesore. Like, I was physically cringing through a lot of it because it was pretty abhorrent. Um, but I don't think it's like any one person's fault. I think that my guess would be that it's definitely the budget, and that maybe they were hoping to get more money, but they didn't get as much. And I feel like what happened with the film is that they probably spent a decent amount on sets, but then they realized that, okay, I can't build all these sets, so we're gonna have to use green screen for much of the locations that recreate, and the quality of the green screen and the CG varies through the film. There are some parts that look really, really bad, and there's other parts that aren't too noticeable or are kind of, like I would say streaming quality. But yeah, and the story is quite disjointed. Now, I'm a fan of the games. And there's a lot that they did change. And I feel like it's hard for me to say as someone who has played the games, but I feel like if you watch the movie a couple times, which is probably going to be really hard for people to do because it's not a great film, you might understand the story a little bit more and what they're trying to say with some of the symbolism thing. I mean, the film does spill out a lot for you. There's a lot of exposition where a character says, this is what's happening, this is what James is going through, or, these characters represent this person. It's kind of spelled out for you. The games don't do that. There's a lot more up to interpretation. But there are still a few things that might confuse some audiences, like the ending. But I think if you watch it a couple times, you'll kind of get what they were going for. So yeah, it's not a great film. I actually thoroughly enjoyed it, but it took the second viewing because the initial shock of the bad CG and the green screen wasn't as bad. And I was like, okay, well, I'm also biased because I like the games a lot. So I was like, okay, I want this world to work. And if I just envision this, in my head, yeah, it doesn't look great, but I can see what they're trying to go for with the games. It made it a lot more enjoyable. So like my personal score, like how I feel about the movie is like a 7 out of 10. But that's with bias. So if I were trying to rate it for the average everyday people and people who are even fans of the game, who don't have my like really forgiving mindset, I would probably give this a 3 out of 10 for most people. But the second viewing, I enjoyed it a lot more, and it was a lot better to me just because of how much I like the games. But there is a lot of jumping back and forth, which might get confusing. It did take me, I brought notes the second time, my little notepad, and I wrote some things down, and then I made sense of some things. So a lot of people might say that the story doesn't make sense, and it is hard for me because I know the games. So I have like some knowledge already, but I was able to connect the dots with just what was going on in the film. There was quite a few story changes to this, and one in particular that, I mean, I didn't mind, but without going too spoilery, there's a cult in this film, much like the original. But that plot line felt really unnecessary because it was a way for them kind of explaining what happened to a certain character in the film. And they could have done that a lot more effectively, I think, without adding a cult. The cult was pretty unnecessary. And I'll get into that in the spoiler-free section. But yeah, I would not recommend this movie to most people, but I personally did enjoy it. But I can see why. I mean, I'm not blind. I mean, I'm biased. So I would not recommend this to most people. So now I want to get into some spoilers and analysis on why I like the film in particular. And I know most people won't like it, but why I liked it. So a lot of people have complained, the hardcore fans have complained about, the flashbacks, that James is a painter. Those story changes, I mean, it's a film. You're condensing 20-hour game into a 1.5, 2-hour movie. And you have to get people to see them in a relationship. In the game, James is just looking for his wife. It's in the movie is his girlfriend, but so I didn't mind for the film format for them to give a little bit more of a backstory, so you kind of care for these characters a little bit more. But the cult aspect, as I mentioned, I didn't like. So in the games, Mary gets ill. She gets ill. She's mentions in a letter, I think it's like one of the files you find, that she doesn't feel attractive. And he winds up killing her, kind of like a mercy killing, I guess. And he has this extreme guilt over it, and this is why he's in Silent Hill. He's kind of coming to terms with what he did. But they added this cult aspect, which, I mean, I felt like the film could have showed her slowly getting sick and it kind of damaging their relationship because, he's still young. He's a man. He's looking at other women while she's getting sick. Like, they could have done that a little bit better versus her getting sick through this cult, because they brought it up, but they never really went back to it. So this cult, they're giving her this medicine that's killing her. They're eating her blood and doing all this weird stuff. But I mean, it doesn't really, other than serving the purpose of showing that somehow damaged their relationship and that made her sick, and then he came back and killed her. It was just a weird story beat. It would have been better if she just slowly got sick, and like I said, he kind of lost interest in her sexually, but still cared and felt guilt. That was one change, the only change that I didn't really care for. So in the games, there's Angela, which is the girl in the film who gets sucked into the bed. That scene was actually really horrifying for me. And in this film, so versus the game, Angela, Laura, and Maria are all versions of different versions of Mary, which they spell out with the grave. So her name's Mary, Laura, Angela, or something like that. So they kind of just tell you that they're different, aspects of versions of her that he's, confronting in Silent Hill and dealing with in Silent Hill. I didn't mind this change because, I mean, it is a film and it's hard to tell a story. So they kind of took these characters and made some narrative changes. For film, I think it makes sense. I get why hardcore fans are upset, but it kind of worked. And, in the game, Angela was sexually assaulted by her dad. And I guess you could say in the film, Mary, it could be insinuated that because of the whole cult stuff, that maybe her dad also sexually assaulted her. So that's that victim side of her that he's seeing in Silent Hill and trying to help. Because people say that doesn't make sense, and that's the way I connected it to make it make sense to the film. I mean, it's not entirely spelled out, but it's kind of there. And they spelled out several times that that Pyramid Head is a representation of James, which the game doesn't really spell out. So there's a scene where you see, kind of James looking through the Pyramid Head. And then there's also the painting at the end that James does, that really spells out that he's Pyramid Head. And the whole time, really, he's in Silent Hill in the other world. It's explained by the psychologist that he is essentially dealing with his demons in his head. So those scenarios when he's facing these monsters and different versions of Mary are him coming to terms with what he did in his head, because he does wake up in Brookhaven Hospital in Silent Hill, and Silent Hill is a normal town. So I thought that was interesting. But I mean, it made sense for the film. In the ending of the film, it seems like what they tried to do was they took like kind of a mixture of the game's endings. So James does kill himself in the end. He does die. And I think the happy ending was more of him in his head rewriting the story of him and Mary for a happy ending, because he does drive into the water and kill himself. So Mary's dead, he's still dead, but he's kind of, made a better version of his life with her in his head. So I mean, I really did enjoy this movie on the second viewing, because I felt like kind of the way I viewed it and the way I analyzed it a little bit here and there for you guys is, I feel like the story is a good story. It's just a little bit marred by the production value and the quality of the film. I felt like if they had more money and they could actually build the sets rather than use that much green screen, it probably would have landed a lot better. And because I'm willing personally and biased to overlook that stuff, the story was impactful. I mean, I will say that scene with Angela on the bed, like, that was a very symbolic but very like in your face way of showing the sexual abuse that she dealt with, which was a little more in your face than the games. The games didn't really show it quite like that. And, I felt like the actors did a good job. I felt James didn't, like, Jeremy Irvine, who played James, didn't have, like, a whole lot to work with, but given the backstory that you did get, you kind of, felt his love for her, and, you could, after killing his wife, it was miserable. I mean, although the production value wasn't good, that scene was, like, really sad, and him coming to terms with what he did. I mean, I felt like the version of Silent Hill 2, the story that they told in the film, was still very impactful and very sad. It just didn't hit the same as the games. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was dark and good, and it's a good film for me, but not for most people. I also wanted to mention that the actress who played Mary did a really phenomenal job too, because I knew that Maria was played by her, but I did not know that Angela was, and she did such a good job.